I've said it again and again and again. There are four organizations that matter in America. There's the mothership for conservatives. That's the Heritage Foundation, helmed by the incredible K. Coles James. There is the NRA that's fighting for your Second Amendment freedoms, then pushing back on the insanity, the political correctness, the censorship on college campuses in high schools. It's Turning Point USA. And then perhaps the one that gets most done to uncover the endemic corruption in the swamp. It is, of course, Judicial Watch. If you have any disposable income, if you've lived a good life and you want to give back, support these organizations now, starting with Judicial Watch. And we have their major domo of investigations, a man who knows national security like the back of his hand. I consider him a friend. Chris Farrell, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Seb. Great to be with you.
You just revealed, divulged to me in the green room as Sarah and John were leaving, you may have some very big news to share with the world tomorrow. Can you share it with our listeners?
Absolutely. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia in front of Judge Royce Lamberth, Judicial Watch is going to seek the deposition of Hillary Clinton.
In what case?
And this is with regard to her email server. The now 5-year-old legal case we've pursued. We've taken depositions, live depositions under oath of people like Cheryl Mills, Huma Abedin, other characters at the State Department. We most recently had a revelation by a gentleman by the name of Hackett, who revealed that he had repeatedly advised Hillary Clinton and her staff that she could not use her BlackBerry, that she couldn't run her own email. Hackett tried to do the right thing. Naturally, he was shot down. He eventually left State Department. But tomorrow we go in front of Judge Royce Lamberth,
who has a good reputation. Yes,
I believe so. Yes, we've appeared before Judge Lamberth for the last 20 years that I've been at Judicial Watch. So he is in senior status now. He's appointed to the bench by President Reagan, but he's taken a great interest in this case, and we're trying to move the ball down the field.
Now, let me ask you an obvious question that will probably have a very strange answer. In the case of having an unsecured illegal server for the transmission of some of the most highly classified national security information in U.S. government, has Hillary Clinton ever been deposed under oath by anybody in the last 5 years?
The only people who have ever gotten her under oath is Judicial Watch, and we did so in written interrogatories. The FBI didn't interview her under oath. No other law enforcement or intelligence security services interviewed her under oath. The only people to get her under oath is Judicial Watch. We did that in writing. Now it's time for us to interview her in person with a live give-and-take Q&A type format.
But this was a person who was investigated by the FBI and interviewed by the FBI.
It was a sham investigation, and you and I both know that. The conclusion was drawn months before Director Comey got up and made his preposterous press statement where, for the first 13 and a half minutes, his press statement was fine.
Well, let's listen.
Yeah.
Let's listen to what James Comey actually said it was until Robert Mueller's equally peculiar press conference the day he left the DOJ as special prosecutor, special counsel. It was the most unusual, perverse press conference I have ever seen. This is James Comey after investigating, quote unquote, investigating Hillary Clinton. Cut one.
Although there is evidence of potential violations of the statutes regarding the handling of classified information, our judgment is that no reasonable prosecutor would bring such a case. Prosecutors necessarily weigh a number of factors before deciding whether to bring charges. There are obvious considerations like the strength of the evidence, especially regarding intent. Responsible decisions also consider the context of a person's actions and how similar situations have been handled in the past. In looking back at our investigations into the mishandling or removal of classified information, we cannot find a case that would support bringing criminal charges on these facts. All the cases prosecuted involved some combination of clearly intentional and willful mishandling of classified information or vast quantities of information exposed in such a way as to support an inference of intentional misconduct or indications of disloyalty to the United States or efforts to obstruct justice. We do not see those things here. To be clear, This is not to suggest that in similar circumstances, a person who engaged in this activity would face no consequences. To the contrary, those individuals are often subject to security or administrative sanctions, but that's not what we're deciding now. As a result, although the Department of Justice makes final decisions on matters like this, we are expressing to Justice our view that no charges are appropriate in this case. I know there were many opinions expressed by people who are not part of the investigation, including people in government, but none of that mattered to us. Opinions are irrelevant, and they were all uninformed by insight into our investigation because we did our investigation the right way. Only facts matter.
Only facts matter. Well, let's look at some facts with Chris Farrell. Before I get you to respond, and I have a couple of questions, let's remind our listeners what your credentials are. What did you do in the armed services, Chris Farrell?
So I was a counterintelligence special agent, as a commissioned officer, as an Army officer, commanded counterintelligence detachments running double agent operations, doing counterespionage investigations, and I commanded the Army's surveillance team both in Europe and the one based in the United States. I'm also a graduate of the farm, so I have the
CIA training,
the clandestine human intelligence case officer training. So I'm not guessing at this. I've done it for a living.
So you are more than amply qualified. James Comey said that no reasonable prosecutor would charge Hillary Clinton. I'm not sure FBI makes that decision. And then he said something fascinating. He said, "We found no intent." Is intent relevant to a charge of mishandling classified information, Chris Farrell?
Comey lied. Intent is not an element of the crime. 18 U.S.C. Section 793F, which is the shorthand for that, is mishandling national defense information. Intent is not an element of the crime. He's lying when he says that.
If it were, that sailor who took a photograph inside a U.S. sub as a memento wouldn't be in the brig.
Correct. The reason why intent is not an element of the crime is that the United States has suffered harm by the person's action. No one cares.
Damage is done.
They don't care what you think about it, what you feel. That's not the point.
And the other issue was, he said, and we've looked at this, and usually in prior cases, it involves a vast amount of intelligence.
Again, he's lying. And frankly, 22 top secret SCI, or sensitive compartmental information documents, that's vast.
Yeah.
That is
including
vast.
SAP. I understand there were SAP, the highest compartmentalized intelligence, cut and paste off government servers and put on unsecure private homebrew server.
Excerpting material off a JWIX terminal, which is a top secret means of communication, excerpting bullet points off of that, typing it out on an iPad and shooting it out over an unsecured server. It is probably one of the grossest violations you could dream up.
And the reason it wasn't investigated, the real reason in the last minute we have with you, Chris Farrell, is that both the State Department and Obama were knowledgeable of that.
They were complicit, in my opinion. Yeah. Absolutely complicit. And it's not a question of negligence or oops, I forgot, or the dog ate my homework. This is a deliberate, willful attempt by the FBI, particularly Comey, again, to throw an election. They could not have a person under indictment for national security crimes as the Democratic candidate for president.